Welcome to the Weekend Weather Explainer. Seriously, take a second and look outside your window today. Depending on where you are in the country, you might be seeing heavy, blinding downpours, feeling this suffocating blanket of heat, or maybe even smelling the acrid smoke of massive wildfires. It's July 31st, 2026, and we are looking at a truly historic weekend in weather. Today we're going to explore a fascinating, if a bit intense, question: what actually happens when extreme weather hits the entire country all at once?
Right now, we are witnessing meteorological chaos on a scale that is just incredible, stretching from coast to coast. This isn't just one isolated storm or a localized heat wave we're talking about. It's a highly interconnected web of atmospheric extremes playing out nationwide. To really understand what's happening outside, we've got to look at the entire map and see how all these different systems interact with one another.
To make sense of it all, here's how we're going to break it down today. First, the deluge. Second, the heat. Third, the inferno. And finally, number 4, the big picture.
All right, kicking things off with part 1, the deluge. We're talking massive storm systems. We are looking at a massive geographic footprint here. We're talking severe, multi-day flood risks stretching right up the East Coast, across the Southeast, down into Texas and Oklahoma, and all the way up through the Midwest. It's just a huge area of moisture completely dominating the eastern and central U.S. 2 to 7 inches of rain. And honestly, in some local spots, probably even more than that. That's the staggering forecast targeting the coastal plains of Southern Virginia and the Carolinas right now. So what's driving this? Well, we've got deep Gulf moisture just funneling directly into a slow-moving front that has essentially stalled out over the region. And because that front isn't budging, places like Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Richmond are just going to get pounded with repeated heavy downpours today and right into Saturday. There is a very real risk for localized flash flooding there.
Now, shifting gears over to the Midwest, we've got a multi-day severe weather event on our hands, driven by a nasty squall line. Just as a quick reminder, a squall line is a continuous line of active, potent thunderstorms that can produce heavy rain, hail, and really strong damaging winds. This particular one spun up over the Dakotas and is pushing aggressively southeast through Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. And hey, for anyone tuning in near Chicago, this system is taking aim directly at the Lollapalooza Festival this weekend. Cities all the way from Fargo to Cleveland are facing repeated rounds of damaging winds, heavy rain, and yeah, even some hail.
Down in Texas, it is pure meteorological whiplash. I mean, after weeks of just brutal, punishing dry heat, suddenly this massive surge of Gulf moisture is moving in. We're seeing rainfall rates topping 2 inches per hour in the heaviest cells right along the Texas Hill Country and the I-35 corridor. And because the earth is so incredibly dry, this sudden quenching is triggering flash flood watches across South Texas, especially since the soil there is still super sensitive from flooding earlier in the year.
Which brings us to part 2, the heat. While half the country is underwater, the other half is locked under stagnant, dangerously hot temperatures. 107 degrees Fahrenheit. Just wrap your head around that number for a second. That is the intense heat index value currently locked in over Jacksonville and a huge chunk of the Florida Peninsula today. And this isn't that dry heat everyone talks about. It is steamy and it is stormy. Actual highs are in the mid-90s, but the humidity just pushes it completely over the edge. Compounding all of this misery are afternoon storms firing up as sea breezes push inland. Plus, the soils across the Big Bend region, they are already completely saturated from the remnants of post-tropical Bertha earlier this month. Basically, it's a swamp-like environment that's keeping flash flood potential really elevated all weekend.
Comparing the different types of heat across the country really puts the whole thing into perspective. You've got that steamy southeast heat in Florida, peaking around 95 but feeling way hotter. Then, as you move west into California's interior valleys, we're seeing dangerous triple-digit heat sitting right around 105 degrees. And finally, baking the Southwest, we're looking at near-record dry heat soaring all the way up to 115 degrees.
So what's actually causing those extreme numbers out west? Well, it's a powerful upper-level high-pressure ridge, and it is completely locked over the Southwest. It's essentially acting like a giant lid on the atmosphere, just trapping all that heat underneath it and driving a major to extreme heat wave. It's actually fast approaching all-time July records in the lower deserts of Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico.
115 degrees. I mean, just let that sink in. Excessive heat warnings are completely blanketing major population centers like Phoenix and Las Vegas. This is heat that the National Weather Service is explicitly calling dangerous and near record. And just to make things even more complicated, this heat is pulling in active monsoon moisture over the mountains, which means they're dealing with localized flash flood risks right alongside this incredibly oppressive heat.
Moving on to part 3, the inferno. We've seen the water, we've seen the heat, and now we're seeing how those exact factors are fueling unprecedented fires.
We are currently looking at critical fire weather conditions. With red flag warnings in effect across the board, conditions are just absolutely ideal for wildland fire combustion and rapid spread. Right now, a cold front sweeping through the northern Rockies is producing gusty winds and dangerously low relative humidity. That combination is what's triggering these warnings across massive stretches of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and the Pacific Northwest.
Once again, the contrast here really tells the story. On one side of the country, we have this heavy, saturated Gulf moisture just flooding the south, but on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have single-digit humidity in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, it is bone dry out there. When you combine 90-degree heat, wind gusts pushing over 30 miles per hour, and humidity that low, you get extreme fire behavior that is just incredibly difficult to contain. 1.5 million. That is the number of acres currently burning across 32 large active fires in Oregon alone. This is officially Oregon's worst wildfire season in a decade. The sheer scale of the destruction happening right now on the West Coast, it's honestly almost difficult to comprehend.
And to give you a sense of just how badly resources are strained by those 1.5 million burning acres, the National Interagency Fire Center actually had to fly in 74 firefighters from all the way across the globe, literally from Australia and New Zealand, just to come help out. Our domestic resources have been pushed to the absolute breaking point.
And here is where we truly see the incredible interconnectivity of all these weather systems. These fires, they aren't just an Oregon problem. The massive smoke plume generated by those West Coast fires has literally spread across the entire United States. We're seeing air quality advisories affecting residents from Idaho and Oregon all the way down to Florida. An event on the Pacific coast is literally choking the air on the Atlantic coast. It's mind-blowing.
Finally, let's wrap things up with part 4, the big picture. Let's pull all this together.
Listen to the exact words the National Weather Service and NOAA are using to describe the situation today. Dangerously oppressive and near record. From squall lines threatening Chicago to completely waterlogged soils in Florida to 115-degree heat baking Vegas, all the way to massive global firefighter mobilizations in Oregon, this is definitely not your standard summer weather. We are dealing with a highly active, highly volatile atmospheric environment that is touching almost every single state.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We've mapped out the deluge, the heat, and the infernos. We've seen firsthand how a fire in Oregon can ruin the air quality in Florida. The sheer scale of this weekend's weather chaos really forces us to ask a tough question. As these incredible extremes increasingly become the norm, just how resilient is our national infrastructure? Thanks for walking through this explainer with me today, and please, stay safe out there this weekend.